We've watched the first half of the Yakuza show. Like a Dragon, Yakuza is what it's called. What do we think? Is it good? Is it a good adaptation? Is it big, poopy, diarrhea trash? We're going to talk about that today here on this episode of the Crubcast.
Oh.
My name is Kevin, also known as Big Poopy Diarrhea Trash, and I'm here with Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris, also known as the trash can it goes into.
I don't poop in a trash can. Okay.
Well, winds up there eventually. It's fine.
Oh, true. Everything does wind up in the trash eventually. So, yeah, this is the Yakuza show. It was announced about 4 months back as a surprise thing that we had rumored in development, and then it is now out, at least the first half of it, and general reviews are mixed from what I've seen. Chris, what are your general takeaways first, and then we'll start going through cinema-sinsy stuff.
I think I'd have to agree. I came into it wanting to like it. I saw a lot of fans upset that it's not a one-to-one adaptation of the first game, which, for those who don't know, it's not. But I was coming in thinking that was a positive, because I think if it was too much like the game, I would have just sat there comparing it too strictly the entire time.
Yeah.
So I came in wanting to really like it. They were saying the right things. I liked their casting choices. The way the show is presented and executed maybe makes it fall flat for me. And I'm trying to separate if I just don't like what the show is doing, or if it's just the pacing and structure of it that has me thrown off.
I know for me, the pacing is kind of my big thing with it. I think I'm more positive than the general takeaways I've seen as far as what changes it makes, because I understand that a lot of them kind of have to be made for the scope of the show. So for those that aren't familiar, this is kind of a Star Wars Obi-Wan situation where it was a movie turned into a streaming service show. So it is 45-minute episodes, so it would, stretch out to an hour with usual ad time and everything. But it's 6 episodes, so they did add more content to it before they started filming. But you can tell that they were trying to crunch as much as they can of not just Yakuza 1, but also Yakuza 0 backstory sort of stuff in a way into this plot. And I think that's what we said before we started recording. There's a lot of back and forth between 1995, which is like the flashback era, both in terms of, if you know Yakuza 1's plot, the pre-Kiryu going to jail stuff, but it's also Yakuza 0. And then it jumps ahead to 2005, which is the plot of Yakuza 1, where it's not one-to-one faithful, certainly, but outside of a couple key changes, it's kind of just down that path.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting because I feel like a lot of fans with the first game would say they wanted more time with the 1995 Kiryu, right? Because you get that opening scene where he buys the ring for Yumi, which is kind of his love interest, who is in the show more here. And you certainly get a lot more Yumi. We'll put it that way. I don't know where it's going. I'm not sure they know. A little lost.
We'll talk about that. For those that are watching, we're going to save any spoilery stuff for the back half of this podcast. We'll warn you when we're going to talk about details, I think. But sorry.
Fair chance we'll also invoke some spoilery stuff from the first game also. We'll try to avoid that, but there's a chance that happens. So be warned if you haven't played it yet. Yeah.
It's an interesting attempt. The Yumi is the most interesting part of it to me, not in terms of like her actual on-screen role, but in terms of what they did to try and give her the screen time that, like you said, fans wanted, because it sounds awful to say, but she's kind of just a MacGuffin in Yakuza 1. Like she's not really there for most of the game until like key points in the plot, outside of a couple flashbacks and Kiryu having feelings for her, as we see in the intro to that game.
Yeah, and even Zero did not do anything with that at all. So
I had to refresh myself on 1's plot because it's been a while since I played it. Mainly with regard to the Yumi having a sister thing, which is also in the game differently. But I was like, wait, is this how the plot went? I don't remember that being the case, and it's not. But when I looked it up, I then saw, I haven't played Zero, for those that don't know. That's the one Yakuza I have not yet played. Yeah. I was like, I wonder if she was in Zero with the Nishiki, triangle thing that they were doing. No, she's in school, is what the Yakuza wiki said. So, it's an interesting thing. They also added a new character, Miho, to the crew to act as flashback Haruka, kind of. Like, she's like a little sister type to Yumi. That's not Yumi's sister. She's another orphan, which I think is maybe their way of hitting on orphanage stuff as well. It's messy, and that's the biggest critique I have. I think in terms of being faithful stylistically to like the main stories, it's not that far off outside of episode 1.
Yeah. All the game stuff that they're pulling from, I'm like, I like how it's translating at least. Like, I think the guy that got to play Kiryu is pretty good. Once you're in like 2005 Kiryu and he's kind of acting more like the Kiryu would expect him to act like, I think he's pretty good. When he's acting like young Kiryu, it's not really Yakuza 0 Kiryu, because for as much as people talk about it, he kind of just acts like any other Kiryu, right? So you kind of see him being a little more roughhousey, a little less living by a code or whatever you want to say. I think their Nishikis are really good. I think their Majima is good.
I really like the Nishiki. I'm afraid of what they might do to his character later, because I did read one take that had seen the full series. Because again, we've only seen the first 3 episodes. The second 3 are dropping a week from the day that this goes live. So Friday, November 1st. And I read something about Nishiki's, final act maybe not being as good as in the games, and like his downfall not being there. But I really like what they did with like his flashbacks, because you see a lot of that character. For those that maybe don't know from the games, Nishiki's character is like a fallen hero sort of storyline. He falls into the evils of the Yakuza and goes from being a dude that's essentially kind of scared a lot of the time and just putting up a front to being like this cold bastard, essentially. And you see that a lot in the flashbacks here in the show, because in the show they say, oh, we want Kiryu to join the clan for reasons we'll go into in a bit. But Nishiki, we don't want him. And Nishiki essentially has to like threaten and beg them to get a job with the Yakuza. And it's kind of what I remember his character being during those interludes between chapters, when we'd see a bit of him in Yakuza 1, where he's really just putting up a front and just struggling the whole time. Yeah.
Especially, I messaged you about it. I especially like it because there's a scene where the Yakuza are visiting the orphanage or something, right? And he's just like groveling beneath them, and he grabs a knife and he starts trying to cut his pinky off to get them to accept him. And there's this one guy, stone faced, watching like, well, it's not going to work.
I think that was Dojima.
Was that Dojima?
I think that was Dojima. Because he moves the knife and he's like, you got to do it here if you're going to cut your pinky off. And they don't show any of that. Like, it's all off camera where his, knife hand is.
Gotcha. For full disclaimer, I'm going to be lost on. I was mostly keeping track of characters by voice, but Amazon Prime messed up today and was back and forth on showing episodes 2 and 3 or not having them work. So, like, through some resourceful methods, I watched basically half of the show in English and half of it in Japanese. So I'm lost, basically.
You're gonna be a little jumbled. Yeah. I figured you were gonna watch in Japanese, so I did watch in English, which was the default on Prime. You can change it if you want to. The English voices were fine. I thought that they were as serviceable as any live action dubs tend to be. It's very in that Netflix style that you expect. I did want to give a shout out to Keiji Tang, who's the voice of Ichiban in the English versions of the modern games, because he voices Dojima and he does a really good job. And that's why I also remember it being him. I'm pretty sure, because you can just hear him. He has a very distinctive voice.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I don't know that I have a lot that I can say as far as not going into the episodes one by one at a certain point. Because a lot of my critiques come to certain things that are how they relate to this version of the story. Because I think we both went in, like you said, and like I said, open-minded to it. And I think on its terms, where it fails or where it struggles is more where I have issue than anything related to how it adapts everything but one specific thing. And that one thing is very early in episode 1, so I don't consider it a spoiler. Kiryu. So the show opens up with them doing a heist on like a little arcade. Essentially, it's Kiryu, Nishiki, Yumi, and Miho, that other girl. And they're doing they're pulling a heist, and they don't realize that they've stolen from the Dojima clan, because that's an arcade they own. So the Dojima clan shows up when the gang is supposed to leave the night before, and Kiryu's going to stay because I guess he seems to have known that they were Yakuza, and he was trying to get them out maybe, and then he was going to join them. It's weird. Yeah. But this is where we find out that the orphanage headmaster is Kazuma, Kiryu's father figure in the games, but he's not the head of a clan in this universe. He's instead, kind of like Kiryu in the later games, a former Yakuza who's been exiled in a way, which I kind of like. If we were going to see more show, I like that they're kind of making that slight change. Anyway, the thing that I don't like is that Kiryu says that he wants to be like the Dragon of Dojima because that's a title now. It's not just what they call him as this legendary figure. There's a specific fighter who has a dragon tattoo on his back who is so badass and cool and awesome. And Kiryu saw him as a kid. And so he wants to be the next Dragon of Dojima. It's very clearly going to be Kazuma. It's going to be his dad. And I like that element, but there's some weird stuff with it relating to Kiryu in the past being like a grumpy teenager saying like butting heads with his dad, essentially, where in the entire plot of the series, Kiryu always struggles with loving his dad and idolizing him despite all his faults. And so that's one of the marked changes to his character. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that that's going to pay off somewhere in here.
I'm hoping. I think that's my issue with it, because like there is the fan part of me that's like, that's a weird thing, because like Game Kiryu, it's a title bestowed onto him, and he kind of just is like, all right,
he doesn't
fine,
like
whatever.
It even.
He doesn't care, right? Yeah, like he doesn't like it. He doesn't care. It's not like an aspiration. But like based on these 3 episodes, it's kind of just it just feels like it's brought up just because that's what he's called in the games, right? Like it doesn't feel like it's actually going somewhere. It doesn't feel like worth even having. Basically, like I don't know why he couldn't just be like, I just want to be the top dog, or I want to be the lieutenant, or like high ranking or something. I don't know why it's specifically the Dragon of Dojima that he needs to be, if it means what it does in this universe. Like,
I almost wonder if they avoided doing a flashback during that moment specifically because they would end up revealing that it's probably going to be Kazuma, his dad, again, not Kazama. It's
that would make the most sense. Yeah,
like that feels like there's like a formative moment somewhere in there where that time he was in Kamurocho as a kid, he saw that happen. And that was like I want to be strong to protect the people I care about. Because that's always what Kiryu is. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's in line with his core character. It's just the way that he gets there is what people think Yakuza 0 Kiryu was, where he's very brash. Mm-hmm. Even though, like you said, from what I've always understood, he's really only like that for a couple scenes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's the same character.
Yeah, I'm sure if you drill down into it, there's more differences, but like from my memory, it's basically,
like they're trying to take essentially what has to be a static character in all of the games, because for the entirety of Kiryu's history, he's a pretty static character until more recent games. Mm-hmm. And that's like his core fault, is that he's static. And they have to take that and turn it into a protagonist of a show. So they're trying to almost force it a little to show why he comes out of jail so stoic suddenly. And there's weird stuff. I think it would mean a lot more if the fights were better, because the fights aren't very good so far.
Yeah, when they do happen, right? There's not a lot of it, which is fine. It's like more of a drama, I guess. But even the one they do, like he gets out of prison, and immediately the clan is coming up to him and being like, no, we're giving you a ride, back to Shimano, I think, right? Yeah,
because the whole thing is that if for those that don't know, in the plot of both the game and the show, Kiryu allegedly kills an upper member of the clan, goes to jail for 10 years. And in the show, they're essentially saying, we're going to pick you back up because boss wants to see you, because boss wants to kill him is the implication, which is a little different than the games.
So they do a fight scene there. And it's like, if I look at the actions of Show Kiryu, he's doing Kiryu things, but the way the shots are shot, the way it doesn't flow, basically, like it's just kind of awkward to watch. Then they do some weird stylistic thing where suddenly it like smash cuts or whatever you'd call it to like a wide shot of him talking to someone and giving them orders when you feel like you're still in the fight. Like it's hard to describe, but when you're watching it, you're just like, it just doesn't come together at all. Like, and when there's so few fights, it doesn't feel good. And
to be clear, it's a beautiful show outside of the fight scenes.
It looks pretty good. Yeah.
Like there are so many areas that are spot on to what you imagine a live action version of the, Kamurocho would be. Yeah. Even down to like the orphanage, which isn't in Kamurocho, of course. It feels like the orphanage that Kiryu would have grown up in which is why the orphanage in Yakuza 3 onward looks like kind of what he remembers it being in this show. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like they took inspiration in reverse to ideally foreshadow stuff that Kiryu does later in the series, if they're going to continue, which they may or may not, who knows.
Right.
And I liked a lot of that. Just seeing those, not necessarily references, but that effort they put into set design. And even down to, like, there was one really cool scene I noticed, which was in Theater Square. There's a sign in the flashback for Apollo 13, the movie, on one of the walls of what would become Millennium Tower. And that stuck out to me just because A, it was in English, so I saw it. But B, because it was like, oh, this is like what this town would be like if it was in the real world as an actual place. Like, you're combining these fake products with these real products, and it's cool.
By a similar token, I'm sure you were thinking about it in 2005 in like episode 3 in the same area. There's like a Forrest Gump poster just in the background as Majima's coming in to shoot people.
I didn't see that, but I did see in the credits of that episode, they referenced, like, there was a big text for Forrest Gump somewhere in the credits, which
it's just Tom Hanks sitting on the bench looking over as Majima's running in with a knife. I'm like, okay. If nothing else, this show gave us that, and that's pretty good.
Yeah, so, 2 Tom Hanks references, so it works.
Yeah.
Do we have any other general thoughts we want to hit on before we start digging a little deeper into story things?
I don't know if it's general. What's up with Saejima in this show?
He looks hilarious.
I did not know that was supposed to be Saejima, who Majima's like blood brother, not blood brother, sworn brother in the games, right? He's supposed to be this big, like, Japanese, basically Dave Bautista looking dude, just like huge and built and jacked, like stone faced. And in the show, he just looks like, I don't even know, but it's.
I think that's a consequence of casting people that have to be able to be active. That like I guess there aren't many 7 foot tall jacked Japanese dudes that could play Saejima. Yeah. The part that stuck out to me, because he's in 2 scenes so far. There's basically, one. Yeah. There's one where he, like, walks in because Kiryu and Nishiki are trying to, in the flashback, we'll hit on some of the plot here. In the flashback sequences in 95, before Kiryu goes to jail, we haven't seen that part of what causes him to go to jail yet. They're doing a pseudo Yakuza 0 where Dojima who's the head of the clan, is talking about wanting to build Millennium Tower, which is the plot of 0. From what I understand, that's pretty much the only part of 0 they're taking actively so far. Just that they're trying to build Millennium Tower. Yeah. And there's an English dude who doesn't want to sell his land to give up the land for Millennium Tower. And so that's a big plot point is, well, we have to steal the deed from him and then his family seal so that they can stamp it and fraud them into owning this, essentially. Which is very heisty and also feels like something that happened in these games at some point. I just don't remember it happening. And it could have been part of 0 for all I know. I don't know. But he's in one of those flashback scenes because Kiryu and Nishiki fail, essentially. And so Dojima says in passing, oh, did you call Majima and Taiga? Taiga is Saejima's name.
Yeah.
And we see them for a moment. And that's the first time Kiryu and Majima cross paths. And then in the corner of that same, like, the little hallway caddy corner scene, you just have very clearly meant to be Saejima with, like, a mop on his head. Like, the hair looks awful. It's so funny.
Right.
Like,
I don't know. It's so in the weeds, but I just looked at it and it's like, even just sitting here now, I forgot that in 4 he did technically have, like, really long, greasy, trashy hair.
Yeah, he did.
But
it looks accurate. It just looks bad in real life.
Yeah, I just could not believe that was him. But
yeah,
there's a few characters like that, actually. Like, for the most part, I think the casting is good, and I think they get it, and I think they get characters looking close enough, right?
Yeah.
But it's him and Shimano, who is not, like, a really important character, but he's one of the few characters in this series who's also kind of big and jacked, shaved head, kind of memorable because you hump him in, like, Yakuza 3 or something.
Yeah.
And it just looks like some dude, and someone said his name, and it just hit me.
He had like Yakuza's, he looked like was it Kuze from 0? Because he had, like, kind of like a curly, almost it doesn't matter. We're in the weeds of characters here. He looked like a character that I remember that I haven't seen, or that is like from early in 1, from years ago before I had put the game down and then come back to it.
Yeah.
I think later he does have a shaved head, right? Because I saw somebody with his tattoos that was bald.
That's where I was confused, because in the trailer, there is a guy who has his tattoos on his shoulders and arms, and he is shaved bald. And he looks kind of scrawny, but again, like what you said, there's not a lot of huge, immensely overweight Japanese men to play that part, right? So maybe he just shaves his head and we get a flashback on that. Maybe that's its own.
Because in the flashback, he had hair, but in the present, I don't think it doesn't really matter.
It's just weird stuff. Like that is part of the problem with coming in as such a big fan, is you look at some of this stuff and you're just like, oh.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you'd like to actually drill in.
Yeah. I think the one thing I want to say before we do is that you should hit the like button on this video. You should leave us a review on the audio realm. If you're listening in the audio realm, you can join us at crub.org/join to join the Discord and tell us how wrong we are politely. All the good things like that. But no, the thing I wanted to say was we kind of hit on it. I think that they are more accurate to the games than I was expecting. And outside of episode 1, and the flashbacks are obviously taking liberties with how they go about Kiryu's backstory and all of that, simply for the sake of telling a coherent show plot, because you can't tell Yakuza 0's backstory well in a show. It wouldn't work because it'd be too long. So I think all of the present day stuff is more accurate than I was expecting so far, and that's what leaves me hopeful, is that they will hopefully be able to stick the landing. And if they do, I would be excited for a season 2 that covers Kiwami 2, because then there's no more flashbacks, unless they do Majima flashbacks for his story in 0. But that would be a whole.
They're going to have a lot more to work with when the Pirate Majima game comes out. Don't you
you're right. And they probably already know. Anyway, I don't know where we start outside of what we said with episode 1. The main thing that stuck out to me from episode 1, and this is really stupid, and this is your spoiler warning for anyone who wants to cut out here. We understand. Watch the episodes, come back. The Millennium Tower is an RPG castle now. Why does it look like that?
It's strange.
It looks weird. It's like Millennium Tower is like, this super awesome high-rise skyscraper that always gets blown up. And in the show, it's like a vertical, skyscraper like you'd expect. And then there are spokes that come out almost like horns from each side of the building. And it looks so fake. And it stuck out to me because it's like, that's exactly what you would expect Ichiban would think Millennium Tower looks like.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, that's actually exactly accurate. Which, if this was following Ichiban, I'd be like, okay, yeah, he's seeing it through his weird perspective. And he's like, whoa, they're building the final castle, bro.
Can you imagine? I saw somebody say, I don't know why they didn't just do an Ichiban series. Can you imagine telling an Ichiban series, A, without the entire plot of the prior 6 games, and B, with the subtext of his character being, I imagine everything's a video game? It would be Ready Player One, but with...
You could even do some unreliable narrator shit and make him like a really tragic figure and just go really terribly with it. I don't know what's gained with the Millennium Tower, A, looking like that, and B, so far having to be a plot point at all. Like it's like the Dragon of Dojima. It's the Millennium Tower. Yeah. It's in every game. You have to mention it. It has to be somewhere. I don't know why it just the show jumps around so much. Was that a flashback? Was that 1995 when they were talking about getting the approval and doing the heist?
No, that's in 95, because that's when Majima. So that's when the chase sequence happens with Majima. Oh, we've not seen modern Majima, I don't believe yet. As far as the first 3 episodes go,
because of his eye. Yeah.
Okay. So like we said, there are 2 split plots here, and they don't do a good job of jumping back and forth. All that there is a little year rolling back or forward when they jump from one to the other. And then they'll just keep you there for like 20 minutes and you won't remember that, oh yeah, Kiryu's not wearing gray, so we're in the past. But he also wears so many different outfits in the past that you could think, like, that's the tell. Their anchor for the present is that Kiryu is wearing gray, which doesn't work when half of the show is not about Kiryu.
He puts a lot of thought into that suit, as he says.
That was funny. I like that bit.
Yeah. To also give myself a little leeway here, like I've had a huge migraine today. I was jumping between totally legal sites to watch this show. So at a point,
we get it.
Yeah, I'm a fake fan. At the point, I was just like, okay, I don't know what anymore. Okay, so that's better for the Millennium Tower.
It's
I'm still
messy,
like, I don't know why we need to I don't know what it adds to this show, right? You're touching on the Yakuza points. I get that it was the conceit of Zero was getting the rights to the land to build it.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that adds to a 6-episode crime drama series yet. I guess we'll see, but it just feels completely like more in the weeds than we've been during this, basically. Where I'm like,
what I'm expecting to happen is that Kiryu ends up killing somebody, or well, rather, Nishiki ends up killing somebody who is the final step away from them building the tower, and that's when Kiryu takes the fall.
Do you think he kills the guy they were trying to fraud the seal from signature, like the guy they were trying to know? He's already dead. Okay,
yeah, they shot him. Yeah, so let's
I'm
run
not
through the
helping
plot.
my case here.
No, you're good. Let's run through the plot. Episode 1 of the show is mostly that weird Kiryu backstory that doesn't feel right to his character quite as far as game character goes. Like, that's where people are going to stop it. They're going to stop watching there and be upset. And I can frankly understand it because there's a lot that gets wonky there.
I've already seen that happening with people today. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one thing I'll say is I mentioned the Millennium Tower. I'm just looking through my notes here. Similar to Podcastimon, the podcast where we watch every episode of Pokemon, available over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Crub.
I'm a lot better at following the plots on those. I'll tell you that.
We take better notes for that. And we watch on very legal sites for that one for sure.
Yeah.
So the only notes I have for episode 1 that we haven't hit on are that Kiryu swears not to kill when he begs to join the Yakuza because Dojima's saying it's going to corrupt you. Or not Dojima, I'm sorry. His dad, Kazuma, is saying it's going to corrupt you. And he's like, no, we just won't kill. So that's Kiryu's pledge not to kill is right there. Little weak. Same conversation as him saying, I want to be the dragon. That scene just probably shouldn't have happened as of right now. I want to shout out, they did the double headbutt during the underground fighting scene.
And then he moans. It's great.
Yeah, because the whole thing is that Dojima says, if you want to join the clan, you have to fight in the underground arena. And if you win, then we'll think about it. And so he's fighting like a regular boxer and he's losing real bad because Kiryu's not a trained fighter. Mm-hmm. And that's when Kazuma, his dad, says something in his ear, which is essentially, he's a boxer. Don't fight him in a fist fight. Just win. Is what I'm assuming he says. We don't hear it.
Yeah, don't try and box. Play it your way, basically.
Yeah.
That's what he says. So it's like,
but
okay. I don't know if that's good advice, but it works.
Yeah, that's the foreshadowing for him being the first dragon for sure. The only other change, or the only other note I have is that Yumi stabs a dude in the ear because they're looking for someone who stole the 10 billion yen, which is the plot point of 1, is that 10 billion yen goes missing. Mm-hmm. And they're like, where is it? Oh, this girl Yumi must have it. And in the plot of the game, spoilers, Yumi pretends to be her sister in order to avoid getting caught, essentially. In the plot of the show, her sister exists and is the one that stole the money. Yeah. And she hasn't seen her sister in 10 years, at least. And so it's really funky, but the Yakuza start going after Yumi, and so she's just able to stab a dude in the ear and kill somebody in cold blood, for one. Straight up, like she's already corrupted, which is a little wonky, and they don't explain the whole sister thing right away, and so that's where I got confused, because they don't explain this well at all. That's where the episode ends, though, because they end with her trying to flee and then getting rammed out of a parking garage, essentially, like the car flies off and crashes into the ground.
Yeah.
Episode 2, I know you said you were weaker on because that's where you had the Amazon Prime Video stuff.
Yeah, it just also happened to be the episode that was like, okay, we're jumping more to the present, but then we're also introducing more subplots.
Yeah,
and it's just going all over the place. So I was just discombobulated at this point.
It's not super well paced, and it's kind of what I expected for a show like this because Yakuza doesn't have a simple enough plot to be a show. That's always been the conceit, is you can't really do it well. Like Judgment would have been a better show. Anyway, this episode opens with a flashback of Yumi, Kiryu, and Nishiki at the orphanage. And I'm only highlighting that because there's a dude who looks like a classic Yakuza enemy, like a big ass pompadour. He's walking with the Yakuza enemy strut. It's great.
Yeah.
Which is then jumping to her waking up and remembering, oh shit, I'm about to get killed because she's like under a car. And so she shoots some dudes and runs away. they're really like they really want to give Yumi some badass moments in this show, and that's fine. It will hopefully help justify what they do at the end of Yakuza 1's plot, because it would make more sense then, I think. Right. Yeah. So the main note I have in episode 2 is that, like we said, Kiryu is tasked along with Nishiki with stealing the Millennium Tower's deed during a random party. And then Nishiki's got an eye on that dude who owns the land, and they successfully steal the deed, but they don't have the seal of the family crest, which is that's what you use to sign things and stamp them legally. Yeah. Which is what he gives to his sister very clearly earlier in the episode. So that dude his name is Edgar Beale. Great name. He gets killed. Like, he's straight up dead. His sister goes into hiding because they both know Kiryu's dad. And so that's the connection there, is that for some reason they're friends for all we know. And sure. That's all I have for episode 2, aside from Haruka showing up.
That was my concern going in, is that there was no Haruka in the marketing. Haruka is such a part of Kiryu's entire impetus throughout most of the series, right?
Yeah.
And it's in episode 2 where they kind of show you, like, in the games, you find Haruka holding a gun in like a bar full of dead people, right? And it's just like a crazy situation to find like a 6-year-old girl in. Here you see her like during an attack, right? So she's hiding out, and then they play this horror music. Then Kiryu pops his head over like a bathroom stall or something and just takes her out as this building explodes. Do they talk again after that?
In the next episode, yes.
In the next episode, do they?
Well, so Kiryu doesn't talk to. So it's weird because like I kind of liked what they did with this scene. In that it's a bolder change for them to take, which kind of has to, I guess, happen because the whole thing is that Haruka is not Yumi's daughter. It's her sister, Aiko, I believe is her name. So
her daughter.
Yeah. So Yumi's niece now, not daughter, which is kind of how the plot goes in the game a little bit, in that they don't know that Yumi is her sister. Like that's the whole, they do that thing. Okay. So I kind of liked the idea of showing the sister in this scene because it shows Haruka in the moment of that trauma, which is, I think, kind of important for her character. But it also shows how desperate the Yakuza are to find Aiko, and that she runs away and like leaves the building because she hears gunshots, turns around, sees the building explode. And it also, by the way, looks like one of the buildings, like one of the big buildings from Yakuza. I appreciated that. Like, it's that weird multi-level building with a lot of like the rooftops. That sounds very vague, I know, but it's the one with the gambling parlor. It's the one with the mahjong parlor in it. They show that building exploding, and I was like, oh, that's that one. Cool. I did the thing where I pointed and said cool. But I liked it in the sense of we haven't seen. I don't know. I think giving a kid a gun just would have been weird in a modern show.
Sure,
as maybe,
for sure.
Maybe it.
I don't need like that specifically. I was just like, I don't feel that Haruka is like part of the show necessarily so far. So I'm a little well, if you're going to bring her in, then bring her in. It's kind of where I'm coming from, I think. But again, first half, maybe in the second half, right? Yeah,
I'm assuming she's a lot more present in the second half. I appreciate they showed her this early, honestly, because again, it's following the pacing of the show, of the game rather, pretty well in terms of when they're doing present day things.
Yeah.
Which brings us to episode 3, where they mostly spend time in the past. Again, key issue of the show. They go back and forth. So go ahead.
They open the episode on Mad World.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's also English license music that happens in all 3 episodes, because they play Electric Light Orchestra at the start of episode 2. I think
it's in there somewhere. Yeah, I don't remember if it's at the start, but
it's in the flashback when the gang gets their first apartment from the clan.
And I was like, that's weird, but whatever.
Yeah.
But
no,
Mad
that's
World.
a weird change. And it's Mad World, and it's also while Yumi is in a childhood flashback watching her mom walk into a lake to kill herself. Yeah. I'm sorry, not that was Aiko, not Yumi. That was
right.
Don't know why that was there.
it was so confusing because I messaged you immediately as it was playing, right? And I'm like, don't tell me it's fucking Mad World. Then 40 seconds in, the flashback is over. So I'm just like, okay, we went through that one real quick. Mad World plays again later in the episode. Also, you don't just get one and done. It comes back.
It's so funky. Like, I think this is where the show is going to fail, if anywhere, is the Aiko part of this plot, because in the attempt at giving Yumi more characterization and story, they split the whole, well, we need a MacGuffin part out of the story. And I don't think that part's going to work, because having two sisters that are both being hunted by the Yakuza, again, is the plot of one, but the way they do it in one makes a lot more sense than this, and that's saying a lot. Because these games have very Byzantine plots at times.
Yes.
And so, yeah, the episode opens with Aiko in a flashback of her mom committing suicide, and then takes that and jumps forward via like a zoom shot of her eyes as a kid to an adult when she sees the building explode, and then she runs away because she's like, well, my daughter's dead, I have to leave now. And obviously Kiryu and Haruka survive. They go to meet Yumi, and that's where Kiryu and Yumi first speak for the first time in 10 years, which is important here only in the sense that they had foreshadowed in prior episodes when Nishiki and Yumi were talking that Kiryu was out of jail, and she's like, I don't want to see him. So that there was something that was there's something else that has happened in there that we don't know that has fractured that relationship.
Yeah, there's some aspect of it because Nishiki goes up to her at Serena, which, for one, weird to see Serena busy. That was strange in a cool way.
It felt like that was a bar in Millennium Tower in this show, right?
Yeah.
That's not just
me. Oh, wait. I might be forgetting the plot of Yakuza 1. It's been so long. I think Serena was the bar in the tower, and the new Serena is the one they put out on that one street. Oh,
you might be right.
I think that's...
Never mind.
Yeah, actually,
sorry,
I forgot about that.
I'm wrong. I forgot that it was a new Serena, because what's the building that was Serena then? That was still a bar too. It was a different name.
I guess it's just the one that blows up, to put it in a way.
Fair.
But yeah, we go there, and it's interesting because Nishiki straight up like, I just wanted to tell you in person, I'm going to fight with, or I'm going to tell my higher ups to stuff it because I make so much money. And she's like, well, how much of that money am I bringing in? I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I don't know why they don't want to see Kiryu, but I like that they're giving these characters these fleshed out details as to why they don't want to, and they like make sense. I don't know why, but it makes sense.
It's also, it flips the idea on its head a little bit, because it's playing into Nishiki not trying to get rid of Kiryu from what we've seen so far. He actually wants Kiryu around, which is the opposite of what happens in the games.
Yeah, in the games, Kiryu comes out and Yumi is, or whoever he talks to, I don't remember anymore, is just straight up like, Nishiki's gone off the deep end. Like, he's just not even the same person anymore. Whereas in this fight, so far as how it's presented, it's like,
they hug.
Yeah, Nishiki's kind of a good guy so far. I don't know what's
which I think is them playing into the Zero thing again, because the whole thing of Zero is that it's Kiryu and Nishiki getting time together so that it helps flesh out Nishiki's downfall and makes it more sad.
Yeah.
And I like them doing something with that here. It could all be, like a not a conceit, but it could all be like part of a plan by Nishiki, because he very clearly wants to take the clan over. The question is he using Kiryu genuinely or ingenuinely to do it?
And I like wondering that, right? Like, for me, that's where the show is working right now, because I do want to see where that goes. That is an interesting difference, or maybe not even a difference. It just, we don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
For me, that's where the show is working. Basically, anything with Nishiki, I'm like, okay, I think they're getting this right, or at least as right as they should, and then doing their own thing. I found it the most interesting parts so far, for sure.
I think it's just, again, it goes down to how they frame the past and the present stuff. I think that's really where it's going to struggle. I don't know how you could have done it too much better besides having the very blatant on-screen thing saying what year it is.
Yeah.
But again, the problem is that it's not a consistent amount of time. Like, they could have done the Breaking Bad Mexico filter. They could have done like a slight grain over the 95 footage. Honestly, it might have done it better. It would have been ham-fisted, but
man, like, there's like the 4x3 aspect or something crazy.
That would have worked. Yeah. I mean, that would have affected more in terms of, cinematography. So I get not doing that. But like, this episode is the one that I messaged you about, where there's a 15-minute flashback all to set up one character, and it's the florist.
the florist, who between you and me is quite a meme. He's just always been funny to us for some reason.
He's so good.
So I'm not mad. I'm just like, what is going on a little bit?
So at some point it jumps back to the flashback because they mentioned the florist. They mentioned that that Yumi and Kiryu should go see the florist essentially to figure out where the sister is.
Who's like an informant who's watching the city through his cameras. If you don't know Yakuza, right?
Good shout. I didn't think about saying that. And they mention also a cool thing I like is that the attackers who attacked Yumi, not the sister, in episode 1 had a Kansai dialect. Kansai is part of Japan. It's a region in Japan. It's like Osaka area, which is notable because Majima has a Kansai accent. That's a big thing they hammer on in the games. So it's like, oh, there's some interclan war happening in here somewhere. Mm-hmm. And they're telling people that maybe know at least a little bit of Japanese culture, but maybe don't know the games that early. Like they're trying to set that up as well as they can in the limitations of the show. Anyway, they jump back to the past because the sister of that guy, I wrote Michael Beale here now, so maybe it was Michael and not Edgar. No,
it was Edgar. I remember Googling Yakuza Edgar to be like, is this someone I forgot somehow?
Okay. But no. So his sister Alice is in the flashback sequence and hiding because, again, they say, oh, someone with a Kansai dialect is the one who attacked Yumi. They then cut to the past, and this is the sequence I was talking about where the girl Alice is in hiding. Past Kiryu and past Nishiki are trying to find her to get the seal because they know that other people are looking for her in the past. And this is where there's a scene from the trailer where they find her at a hotel. Then Majima and gang show up and also find them. So they're chasing Alice while being chased by Majima. Majima pulls out a goddamn gun and starts shooting people in Theater Square. That's the scene from the trailer.
Right.
Alice shoots back and shoots Saejima in the stomach. And Saejima says, I'm not going to die. Don't worry about me. That's their way of writing him off so you don't see him in the present. Like that is their way of saying Yakuza 4 comes later, but he's here for now.
Right. That's totally why they did that. I didn't even 2 and 2 on that one. I just accepted it. I was more focused on how it looked like Majima was going in for a kiss on him and then took his weapons and just walked off. There's some bromance there for sure.
I got distracted the moment he got shot because I was like, that's a smart way of writing him off. Like, honestly, credit to them. And
that's a lot better than trying to go into the rubber bullet backstory of that character. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole thing. And anyway, this sequence ends with Majima. They're all underground in like the sewers, essentially, like some part of a building that looks like the sewers. And Majima is walking out with a gun and his knife, and he's saying, don't run from me. That's in the dark. They start fighting. It's a Nishiki and Kiryu versus Majima fight, which is pretty okay. There are several times where I checked in Japanese, when Majima gets hit in the back of the head, he goes, not fair or something like that. Yeah. But he makes the Majima squeak. Like he has that tone in his voice, which I liked. Shout out to Matt Mercer is also his voice in the dub here, which he is the current dub voice of Majima as well in the games.
I thought it sounded like him, but I kept forgetting to actually go and check on. That's cool.
Yeah. So they also a good place to have him because he does a pretty okay Majima.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anyway, because this is very messy, I know, and I apologize to those that are trying to follow as a plot synopsis.
It's like the show.
This is genuinely how it is. This is all still flashback. Majima apologizes to Dojima, who is the leader of the clan, for not finding Alice. And then Dojima says, it's okay, but I've told you not to fire a damn gun in the middle of public. We've now lost sponsors, being like people that they're which is great, a great line, mind you, for us here on YouTube, but different meaning. So he's the one who stabs Majima in the eye, and he's the one who causes Majima to have the eye patch in the present, which we haven't yet seen, which I thought was
by the way, that I really felt like my stomach drop. It's just so visceral as he stabs into him. I was like, okay, that felt good. It didn't feel good, but it felt good.
It's really good, and it motivates Majima probably being on Nishiki's side and overthrowing the clan.
Yeah.
So, because it's like Dojima is still running the clan, so it's a good motivation. And the last thing I'll say about this flashback, and this is why I laughed so hard, is that one of Date's underlings in the police goes and chases after them, finds Alice laying there in hiding, handcuffs her and says, "You can call me the florist." And so this whole 15-minute flashback with very important moments is all just to set up this fat dude who's sitting there wearing a robe in the underground in front of 1,000 TV monitors that are all tapped into the entire city of Tokyo.
It's something.
I lost it. I lost it.
It is hilarious for sure. I'm just this is the problem with coming in as a fan though, right? Forest of Sai, very funny. You and me, we love the guy.
He's so good.
But in the games, right? I'm going to be that guy for a little bit. He is in the show. He's like a creep. He's like weird. He's like giggling. He's like, "I want to see you back in the ring," you know. And he's like throwing himself over his little couch, and like he's just very weird, right? In the games, he's just kind of an old dude. Like he's greasy and probably smells like too much cologne, you know. But he doesn't seem like a creep.
See, when this scene happened, the other thing that hasn't happened yet in the show, which is probably episode 4, is the florist says to Kiryu and Yumi, "I'll give you the information for X amount of money." And then he says, "Well, it's okay. I'll give it to you later. Or you can pay me later because you're looking for 10 billion yen. So what's 100 million yen or whatever. But Kiryu, I want to see you fight." Which is what happens in the games. That is exactly how this plot point happens in the games. And the thing that I may be misremembering is my recollection of him from this first scene that he appears in Kiwami 1. He was kind of in a similar level of creep. He changes after that scene, I'm pretty sure. I could be misremembering completely, but I remember him being a really weird dude, and then he normalizes right after that.
Maybe I memory hold it, and I just remember the slight noble qualities of him after that then, because he does eventually just become one of Kiryu's weird friends, but not friends pretty quickly. Right,
because the whole thing is he runs the underground arena in this underground area called Purgatory, which thankfully they have not covered. They should not they should not talk about Purgatory in the show. But because he's sitting there on the little throne, he's like smiling and laughing almost during that fight during the cutscenes. I think.
I see.
In 1, I think.
It is quite a bit more exaggerated here, though, if that's the case. Oh, yes, for sure. To the point where I don't remember that about the original, but here it is just like, oh, this is off-putting me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's been so long since I played through 1 at this point.
And I think the florist was a cop in canon in the games as well. He was a former cop turned Robin Hood type figure. So like, I feel like otherwise he's pretty on track. If I'm remembering correctly, I could be wrong. And let me know in the comments what we've gotten wrong, because I don't think either of us have played this game in 7 years.
It's been a long time. Like even the stuff with Zero, like that game is almost
a decade
8 years old, right?
Yeah.
I played it when it came out, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
I like that specifically though. The Forest of Sai has a bunch of like women in their 50s working for
instead
him.
of homeless dudes. That's probably a better way of playing that. Because that also works with like like a ladies of the night sort of soapland situation. Like that feels like it fits better in the plot of a nightlife based Yakuza, because there's also a lot of stuff like there's a cabaret flashback sequence that happens involving Yumi and Miho, because they're brought into Kamurocho with Kiryu and Nishiki in the past to be hostesses. And they show a lot of that stuff, and they also show like that girl Miho we haven't mentioned at all, getting super drunk because she's like playing the super peppy nightlife person, where Yumi is just trying to find her sister. She's just using it as a means to an end. And
I wish I had a thought on Miho other than she's there, right? I don't not like her.
I'm expecting her to die because she's not in the present at all.
Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Like, I don't know how it'll happen. We know Kiryu's in prison for killing somebody above him in the clan, so that hasn't changed. Is it that Yumi ends up accidentally killing her? Does she get killed by like a rough Yakuza patron? You know, like she's gonna die, and it's gonna be sad. But like so far, I like her because she's very much like a Haruka figure for the past, and I think that is valuable. If nothing else, because Yumi's probably going to try and like pseudo adopt Haruka and be like, you remind me of somebody.
I can see that. That would make sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned a character who I realize we haven't mentioned because he's technically around, but also not really. You mentioned Date. a couple minutes ago, and I was like, oh yeah, right.
Yeah, he's
Dante's
here.
in this show.
not voiced by Bill Farmer though, so.
Yeah, so like what's the point?
Yeah.
Why is he even here? I guess in the latter half, maybe him and Kiryu will buddy up and he'll be around.
Because they talked already. They talked at the start of Kiryu getting out of jail. Because it's Date who's like there with him, I think. And also they talk in the flashbacks somewhere because Kiryu's like, Date's like, Kiryu, why were you in the same area as the guy who got shot? People have pointed you there. And Kiryu says, I don't know what you're talking about. A lot of people look like me. And Date says, all right, well, just know we're keeping an eye on you. I'm a big fan. And that's very Date. So I thought that worked pretty okay.
That felt pretty correct. Yeah.
It's just, it comes down to they're telling 2 games of story, or at least a game and a half of story in 6 hours. And if you put those 2 games together, it'd be 60.
Yeah.
Like, or 50 at bare minimum. Because like one story, if you speed run it, is still 8 hours. Like not counting all of the backstory they have to get to, they would still not have enough. I mean, they would have time because a lot of that's fights, but you kind of need some fights in the show, and there's only been 2. And you're not going to beat the allegations of Kiryu being a wimp from his, being smaller as far as his actor goes, if you don't have him be a total badass in a fight. And he's been that so far, but it just hasn't felt good.
Right. Like President Kiryu fights like Kiryu. That is like one
yeah.
thing I thought they did a really good job with. It's like, it just felt right, Yeah.
And
again, it was just the cinematography around it. But yeah, that makes me think about the actor who's like, I tried to bulk up for the present scenes, and have a contrast physically to help you figure it out. And I'm like, man, if he bulked up for a show where he barely fought after bulking up, that's a little sad. That's unfortunate. I do
appreciate, I will say, if nothing else, I appreciate that they did use, they found a logical reason to not have Kiryu have the tattoos shown in the present day until pretty much probably the end of the series, because that would be a bitch to put on that prosthetic. Like, that was my big thing, was like, how do you have Kiryu keep doing, like, he can only have his shirt off in the final fight. Like, that's how it's going to be if they continue the show once per season. So I appreciated them using I guess it's like every fight he wins, he inks more of the tattoo, is the way the dragon works in the show, is what I read.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Do you want to place a bet here that'll age within a week?
Let's bet.
When he goes to take the shirt off, are they going to do the game thing where he just grabs the shoulder and everything just comes off in one?
Oh, no question. If they don't do that, this show is dog shit. Like, that has to happen. I don't care. That has to happen. They talked about doing the baby, the adult man babies scene, right?
Oh, the guy said his son walked in on him playing that as he was like researching. But
okay.
They should also do the adult baby scene.
Yeah, because I don't know. I think that needs to be there. I don't think they can do it any other way. And the thing about the cinematography of the fights being a little wonky, I will say, like that first fight when he gets out of jail against his own clan members, it felt in a way like he was doing 6 heat actions in a row, because they kept cutting to him, like grabbing a specific dude. Like there's a dude where he like slams his face into like the concrete jail wall and drags him across. And there's like a really like a sandpaper sound as they're dragging this man's face across concrete. It's pretty visceral. And that feels 1-to-1 with like the camera angle they would have used. There's just missing a square button over the front.
That is true.
They could be shooting it almost in a way sometimes too accurately in terms of those fights, if that's the case. There's only been 1, so it's hard. Well, 2, so it's hard to say. But
that brings me to a telltale split decision kind of thing. So I'm going to do both, actually. The first thing I wanted to say, one tiny little detail, since we're now this far in, that really felt Yakuza to me, maybe even unintentionally. In the first episode, Kazuma goes up and confronts them after the Yakuza are talking to them about robbing from the arcade or whatever, right? And he's trying to drill into Kiryu like, no, you don't want to do this life. Barley's acting up.
Sorry.
He holds his hand up and shows that his pinky's gone, and like this guitar is just riffing over the entire time.
Yes, I did have that written down. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I was like, that feels like Yakuza. That's like too corny to not be intentional.
I literally had the bullet point where he swears to kill. That was the bullet point under what you just said, because I just missed that when I was rereading through all these. It's so good. It's the most Yakuza sounding guitar riff too. Like it's that, and then they cut to like the sad music almost. It's not the same sad music, but it's pretty close. Yeah, it's not that one, but
the other thing I thought of, this is very unrelated, but if we want to maybe float this as something to do for Patreon, have you ever watched the live action Yakuza movie from the 2000s?
I haven't. I've heard good things. Well, I've heard things.
I think I want to set us up where we like do a commentary or something over that for your first time watching it.
I would do that.
Because I think weirdly it has a lot of the issues here, but I think the game stuff is so fun that it's still kind of worth watching. And I just want to watch you react to them do stupid shit like heat actions. Because you mentioned that. And I'm like, man,
I'm cool with that.
That movie like went 100% in on like a heat action or two, and it's really funny.
the thing I had heard was that Majima really outshined everybody else.
Yeah. Like I like this Majima, but that one was like you just put the game character into the movie basically.
Yeah. Because that was the thing that I felt that this subdued, more visceral Majima fits the tone of like a live action thing. And I remember thinking back to when I had heard about that Majima in the 07 movie, just being so gamified that it was like, you can't, like, he's too larger than life for it to work in a live action setting, especially next to, Stonewall Kiryu.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would absolutely watch that. And I believe we're definitely going to do something where we talk about the other 3 episodes of this show. It may hit the YouTube feed. It may go out on Patreon. So if you want to join the Patreon, it's only $5 a month for the video tier. You get every piece of video content we've ever done, including a ton of bonus content. So hundreds of hours at this point. But
early access to the podcast. We've gotten bad about not mentioning that you get the podcast early also.
You also get early versions of the podcast. So that's worth mentioning, that we should write that down for our plugs. Oops. Anyway, we're going to do it with at least the 2 of us. We might have a couple others as well, because I know Nico wanted to watch the show and Moriarty was interested in it because it was an easier entry point than the games for a lot of people. And it genuinely probably is. So we're going to talk about it in some capacity, even if it's just the 2 of us again. So look forward to that.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts on the show that we haven't hit on so far?
I think I need to watch it again and be able to pay more attention.
Before you go back,
I think I like it more than when I came in on this like an hour ago. I think maybe I'm just like, maybe the circumstances were just kind of working against me on this one. Yeah, I think I'm still going to have a lot of the same problems. I think I'm just going to be more forgiving, perhaps.
Yeah, and to be clear, I think that there are, like, if it wasn't clear enough, there are a lot of issues with the show that I think are present. I think that not a ton of them involve the contents of the game directly. It's just they made the bold and maybe probably poor decision of juggling 2 games at once. And not saying that they were going to, because that was never a thing that anybody was told was happening until this came out.
Right. So it's been my biggest kind of thing I've just been working through, because I just look at the choices they make in terms of like adapting and stuff. And I'm like, that's a good choice. That makes sense. The casting's good. The set's good. Like everything we've pointed out individually is like, no, they're doing a good job. It's just the way it's all coming together just isn't quite coming together so far.
It would have needed a few more episodes at the very least. I think it's just very crunched for time. Whether that's a budget thing or not, who knows? I'm hoping there's a scene somewhere in here where you get Kiryu getting his, token end game level of emotional, because I think we need that from present Kiryu to explain why he changed. Because we don't have that yet. He's very brash in the flashbacks, and he's very stone-faced in the present. And I think that we need the explanation for that change to happen at some point in the next 3 episodes.
Yeah.
If not, it is a huge failing on the show's part.
I think he's crossed.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I feel pretty okay. I think that it's going to be hard not to have the ending be supervillain shit. Frankly, I think that's going to go really over the top, and that's probably not a good thing, but I don't know how you do it.
Tower design, it kind of feels like they might lean that way. Yeah.
Yeah. What if the sides of the tower fall off at the end because of the helicopter that shoots through the windows?
And then it just looks like a normal building after.
and that's where all the money is. So then the money goes flying everywhere from those spokes that have killed thousands of people as they fall off. And then they show Akiyama getting money.
And then we get the Akiyama side series, like the Knuckle Show. Okay, I'm picking it up. I'm seeing the vision here. Okay.
Can it be Akiyama and Wade?
Yes. Well, that's what the show is missing. If there was Wade Whipple, I think all the elements would come together.
A puppet musical flashback to explain why Akiyama found $10 million.
Knuckle Show is ridiculous.
Oh, it's so good. Speaking of ridiculous, our Patreon Crubscriber question of the week. That's another perk of our Patreon. Or you can hit the join button down here on YouTube below. Or you can even subscribe over on Twitch, where we stream most of our podcasts, not this one, live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to ask us questions that can get read here on air, or give us hot takes, because we also have hot takes episodes, join over there for as little as $2 a month, also known as the throw a quarter at each of us tier. Speaking of throwing a quarter at one of us, Brody, one of our members, also a patron for some reason, asked us this question: if you could spend a day as any video game character, who would you choose and why?
Oh, gosh. Did you have an answer going in? Because I've thought of one that in the last 3 seconds started as a joke, but I think it's real now. No,
I was going to make a Yakuza joke the whole time, so.
Okay, I'll continue with that. I want to be the Forest of Sai, because sitting back and watching Kamurocho all day while just scratching my bare chest through a robe sounds kind of okay. Eat some Cheetos. My couch is probably sticky, so I wouldn't have any incentive to get up, right? I don't know what more you would want.
That's fair. He's super rich. He's connected.
Hates his son, just like me.
Oh God, I forgot his son. That's right. That's a side story. That's a Yakuza 3 side story, I think. There's a 4.
It might even be 1. I don't remember anymore.
Oh shit. I remember it. I think he comes back for sure at some. Whatever the case, I was gonna make a joke about being Kiryu because of the end of Yakuza 3, where he gets stabbed and then they never acknowledge it again. But that's not a spoiler. I mean, it happens, but they never acknowledge it again, so it's fine.
Right. By the time you get to the end of Yakuza 3 and Kiryu gets stabbed, you won't be like, oh my God, is he dead?
It's spoilers for Yakuza 5. The plot is Majima's dead. Guess what happened? He's not dead. This series is so dumb. Florist of Sai is a really good one.
Right, because it's just like, well, you know everything. You get paid to know everything. You just sit on a couch and watch surveillance cameras, presumably all day. You run an illegal MMA ring, so you can always switch the channel over to that, right? You have tigers going in there and killing people. I
would be Gary Buster Holmes, who better be in the next episode of this show. If there is not an 8-foot tall, 400-pound jacked black dude with like metal spiky fists in the next episode that Kiryu has to take down in order to impress the Florist of Sai, I don't want it.
The spike ball fist is one of those levels of detail that I'm always so amazed that they continue to keep. I'm glad they do, but it's just it might actually literally be the dumbest thing in this series, and there are so many stupid things. He like beats them together for some reason.
In a series with Mirror Face, I don't know that that's possible.
It's like neck and neck, if nothing else, right? Like it's just it's like in a void. It's like sure, whatever. But the fact that it's kept going through all this time is like I don't know. I just don't understand why that choice was ever made.
Honestly, if they still like knowing that they were like, well, we're not going to put karaoke or other wacky side things in the show. That's a good thing considering they only have 5 hours of runtime. To be clear, like, can you imagine if they had other things they had to fill as well for, I have to go pocket racing.
We got to go through the checklist so people on Twitter don't get too mad on us, right?
Yeah. Like, no. But if they don't have karaoke, but they do have Gary Buster Holmes, I think objectively that's probably a mistake. But I don't care. I want Gary Buster Holmes.
Just combine them and get karaoke, right? Get a little
that would work. I would be okay with karaoke. I don't have anything else to say.
I think that's the episode.
Yeah, that's it. Goodbye. Thank you for watching. Again, make sure to subscribe if you're new here. Both of us talk a lot about Yakuza on every episode of the podcast we're on. It happens frequently.
Kind of does.
We can't escape.
Let us know what you thought of the show in the YouTube comments, by the way, or the Discord, or whatever. Like, I want to know what other people think. I want to feel less alone. Maybe. Yeah,
I'm very curious how people are going to feel as they get through more of it. Because again, I think a lot of people are going to stop after episode 1. And on one hand, I can't blame them because it's not a very good episode of TV. Like it's rough. It's just a generic crime drama thing. And I don't think that's what Yakuza really is. But after that, that's what made me hopeful. I thought 2 was not super eventful, but it had enough that kept me invested every 5-10 minutes where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm curious where that goes. And 3 was very much the same way. So people that do stick through it, I'm hoping that we're in for a treat, and I want to hear what you guys think, like Chris said.
Yeah.
So crub.org/join, leave a comment below, leave a review, and leave us your thoughts in the review if you're in the audio realm. I don't know that we'll find them in time to read them in the next episode, but we'll try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.